Hello and welcome to another episode of the PropSwap podcast. We are your hosts, Ian Epstein.
And Luke Pergande.
And we are also the founders of PropSwap, the first marketplace to buy and sell sports bets. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We've got another great episode for you. We are joined by professional sports bettor, longtime PropSwap customer, and someone we're lucky enough to call a friend, Zack Price. He is with us right now, and we will hop right into it. Zack, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Yeah, so great to be here, guys. And, I'm also a PropSwap podcast listener. I listen to, all the podcasts. I think it's one of the best out there. So I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Well, we appreciate those words. I know you listen to a lot of different sports podcasts out there. So we appreciate that. So, another thing we have in common too is we all have some Chicago Midwest roots. And I know, Zack, you're currently wearing, what is that, a vintage Chicago Bears shirt? I know you were at the Bulls-Nuggets game over the weekend. What's the story behind that shirt?
Yeah, for those of you watching this and not listening to it, I'll just give you a little preview of the Chicago Bears 1985 Super Bowl butterfly collar shirt that I picked up at a thrift store, which, I take a picture of these thrift store purchases and I send them out to see if it's a yay or a nay. So I sent it out to a couple ladies and they were like, nay. And I sent it out to Ian, my Chicago guy, and he gave me the 3 fire emojis. So I said, I'm buying it and I'm wearing it out of the store and I'm wearing it to the Bulls game that night. And so I did.
Value in apparel and value in sports betting. I tell you.
Yeah, well, look, I'm a fan of vintage sports stuff as well. I'm wearing a throwback White Sox hat, and Denver also I think has some really great great vintage finds. And then Luke, you're also wearing an Arizona hat, not vintage, but big weekend, big win over the weekend for the Wildcats.
Yeah, first time in program history, 3 straight weeks of ranked wins. So, yes, gigantic win against UCLA, knock off the ranked Bruins. So, they're on a hot streak. Did not start the season very well, but they got hot at the right time here entering November.
Well, as someone, I've been following the team as well. Our losses were overtime, at Mississippi State, a touchdown loss against Washington, which is a top 10 team, and then a triple overtime loss at USC. Those are the Arizona's three losses. But I feel like that record though is due to the strength of the Pac-12, right? Because it's not every year that you're going to get to face three ranked teams in the Pac-12. The Wildcats will be in Boulder this weekend, and I will be attending that game. So good stuff all around for Arizona. Maybe not so much for the Bulls this year, but enough about our sports teams. Zack, obviously a lot to get into. Before we get into the sports betting piece and your history using PropSwap, I thought we would just talk about kind of your background and history with marketplaces, because I thought that was, when I first met you, a very interesting thing, and it made sense as to why you were so accustomed to using something like PropSwap. Why don't you tell us about some of the history you have when it comes to marketplaces?
Yeah, Ian, when I first found out about PropSwap, it was like, the greatest thing I had ever thought about in sports betting. And I can tell you from a young child, if you want to go way back, when I was 10 or 11 years old, I was collecting baseball cards and, I wanted to produce my own card show, memorabilia show. So what I did is I put together 2 sides of the marketplace. I, got a bunch of dealers who had merchandise to sell, and I sold them tables at my high school gym. And I found a bunch of collectors that wanted to come and buy merchandise. And so I advertised and brought in all of these collectors. And so I put together the dealers and the collectors all in my high school gym. As a kid, my mom drove me to the gym and, helped me set it up. But yeah, that was my first experience with the 2-sided marketplace. And then we can fast forward to, I went to the University of Michigan. And after I graduated, I just couldn't believe the demand for football tickets on campus, and of course used textbooks. And this is before iPhones and before mobile marketplaces.
Yeah. So just to back up there a second. So you were like what, a young teenager, and some most kids, they're the ones doing the collecting, but you were like a young teenager, and you were like, no, I don't want to just do collect. I want to like match the buyers, the collectors and the sellers.
Ian, teenager. I was 11, man. When I was 10, when I was 9, I was a collector. So everyone knows the 1989 Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck. So I was 9 years old. If you want to figure out how old I am, you can get out your calculator. And when I was 10, I started selling cards at card shows. I started selling my collection because I'm a big seller of things. And I'm not afraid to sell something at its peak. And we can talk about that later. But when I was 11, yeah, I said, well, I'm selling, and I know a lot of people that are buying, and I know how to reach the buyers through Beckett, magazine, and so yeah, I decided that why not just own the whole damn thing and get the dealers to sell and get the the collectors to buy, and kind of put them together in one central location so they could just interact in a market.
Awesome. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, you started a marketplace for Michigan textbooks. When Luke and I were in college, there was a couple of websites that did that, and some big ones at that. But then also just Michigan football tickets, and matching. Obviously this was pre StubHub, and all that stuff as well. But all right, so I think that's a good primer into your history behind marketplaces, but let's kind of move more into your sports betting history and background. First and foremost, how did you get into sports betting, and when do you think it really kind of started to take off for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I always wanted to figure out how to turn sports into a business. As you can tell, from when I was 9 and 10 years old, buying sports cars like Bo Jackson shoulder pads, Ken Griffey Jr. upper decks, and watching an increase in value, and then unloading the product for a profit. And so you could say I started right then and there. But the truth is when Tiger Woods hit the scene in golf, and I was a competitive golfer at the time, I just couldn't believe my eyes at what this guy could do with the golf ball and competitively against his competitors. And so I started betting Tiger Woods to win tournaments. And it turns out that was like an ATM machine. And, I think when I first realized I have a future in this was the 2001 Masters. That also was the end of the Tiger Slam. I figured out a way to make a correlated parlay with an offshore book. And it turns out that I took Tiger Woods to win the Masters, and I took Tiger Woods for his next major win to be the Masters, and they let me parlay it. So I got 4-1 odds and 4-1 odds on both of those, parlayed at 16-1 odds. I put everything in my piggy bank on it. Remember, I wasn't even 21 at this time. So I put $1,000 on it, and it would have paid $16,000, and Tiger Woods won. Except the sports book, after he won, realized that it was a correlated parlay, and they voided one of the legs. So they ended up paying me 4-1 on that. I was very upset. And I was never allowed to bet there again. So that was my first endeavor as a real, true professional sports bettor. That was 2001. Yep.
So it's been for the new entrance to legal sports betting. It's been a cat and mouse game forever. I tell people all the time, like, it's the rules can be difficult to navigate when the sports book can just cut you off. So this is not just FanDuel, DraftKings, usual legal regulated market. This has been going on for 2 decades.
I think they call it the European model. So it's been going on for a long time, and I did learn a lesson that day. And but I just continuously believe that there is a way to turn a profit in this industry, whether it's finding a correlated parlay or modeling out or understanding golf and the Masters. And how correlated that is to the golfers each year. There is a way to turn a profit in this industry if you have the time and the effort to do it.
So it sounds like you kind of got your start in sports betting out of your love, and passion for Tiger. You finally kind of got hooked when you thought you hit that correlated parlay. But at what point do you think you maybe started using some strategy that was outside of just, hey, I love this golfer and I can maybe get, and I can correlate these two things together? When did you really kind of start like crunching the numbers and spreading your bets around to things that maybe, you didn't have as much of a love for?
Yeah, absolutely. And so in 2018, a friend of mine and I, he's a Yale mathematician, and I'm the better, and he loves basketball. So we combined to make an NBA model for props. And in 2018, there was no online sportsbook, so I was going out to Las Vegas where you were, Ian, and we were, having lunch together at the Westgate Superbook. And the Superbook was one of the only places that would have props on the major players. So it would be LeBron and Joel Embiid and Damian Lillard, and all there was like points props. But I also found a website out there. Some of you guys might remember it listening to the podcast, called Five Dimes, and they had props on everything. And so we would sync up our model with Five Dimes and find where there was ROI on the prop for that night. And then I would take a look at those props and use my knowledge of the NBA and the coaches' strategies and who played last night, to then, bet in Vegas, maybe on one side, and at Five Dimes on the other, maybe hit a little middle in there or some risk-free arbs. And so again, like, that was when I was using the markets to find profits, and it was very profitable.
And so yeah, so it was less so, betting one side, but more so in terms of finding gaps in the market where two different sports books would have numbers that were completely different from each other, and you were less concerned about making either winning a lot or possibly losing, and you were more so concerned with, like, how can I guarantee myself a profit no matter what, and I'm perfectly happy with taking a small guaranteed profit, with the arbitrage or the middling, versus let me try and make a couple $1,000s real quick, but it also could end up losing you some money too. Yeah.
Right. I think the best entrepreneurs and the best gamblers are actually the best at mitigating risk. So you look at us as risk takers, but the truth is we want to mitigate risk as much as possible. And so that's what I did. And I was taking risks. I was betting, LeBron's over under and things such as that. But that was based on, deep statistical analysis. So I was placing my smaller bets on those things. And then obviously when I found an arbitrage, I was betting as much as I can on either side. When I found a middle with maybe like a 5% juice, but I thought had a 22% chance of hitting, I would bet, pretty heavily on both sides and take my medicine on the 5% when it loses, and hitting the middle more often than it would provide a profit for me.
Yeah, and I'm sure your numbers along with your math guy were probably telling you that if you could find a middle that was going to be right around the number you guys projected, then I'm sure maybe you were hitting more middles than one would assume. But all right, so now we make it to 2018 or thereabouts, and you come across PropSwap, myself and Luke. How did PropSwap change your sports betting strategy at that point?
Yeah, so I'll never forget it. I think I forget exactly when or how I heard about PropSwap, but I know that I was in Vegas betting the Masters, the 2018 Masters. Patrick Reed was the winner that year, and I had a bet on VJ Singh. I think it was like 1,000 to 1 at the Superbook, let's call it. And I did not think VJ Singh was going to win this tournament, but I was like 1,000 to 1. The guy won it in 2000. Like, he seems to play very well here. He's got a great swing. Like, 1,000 to 1's insane. And so I made, let's call it, a $20 bet. And sure enough, day one, VJ Singh shoots like 3 under, and he's in 11th place. And I got Luke's number somehow, and I texted him, "Hey, I got a VJ Singh, that pays $20,000, and he's, 1 back or 2 back. How much is this ticket is worth?" And he told me that it was worth maybe $170. And I thought to myself, man, this is for me, because I find value on golfers that are, golf is the best sport to bet. If you want long shots, everyone's a long shot. I mean, John Rahm favorite to win the Masters will be 12 to 1 odds. So, and I thought to myself, I know where the value is in these golfers and these golf tournaments and certain courses, but the chance of hitting a winner is so small. And a lot of these guys actually have no chance of winning, but the odds are just so great. And so that opened up my eyes to a different way of betting. And once I found out that I could sell my bets to other people on PropSwap based on the value of the bet and not necessarily if it was going to win or not, I started betting more on the players that were long shots, and I started betting on more golfers, because I was just finding a lot of value everywhere, especially comparing odds from different books and futures and golf. There's a lot of value out there. And so that first opened my eyes, was betting golf.
Yeah. And not to mention at that point, to make a hedge on a VJ position after the first round, nearly impossible. I mean, you got to bet on 30 other golfers to properly hedge. And even that, if you bet on those 30 other golfers, you still may, not bet on the guy that eventually wins on Sunday. So it's not a perfect scenario. The only way to lock in profit after the first round is to sell it.
100%.
Yeah.
You cannot hedge golf unless you're in a one-on-one, Sunday matchup. There's just no way to do it. The only way to capture that value on a long shot playing well is to cash out, which they certainly didn't have then. And nowadays, cash out ain't the best way to get your money out. The best way is to sell it to another person on PropSwap for market value, or maybe even a little worse than market value.
Yeah. And I do want to stress, and we'll kind of touch back on this a little bit. Like you've sold plenty of winners too over the years as well, right? I mean, there is some psychology that we've run into with some customers where the idea that they could sell a ticket that ends up winning would be almost it's a worse feeling than if they were to not sell a ticket that loses. But from the get-go, you had absolutely no problem being like, look, I'm going to make this 150% whatever ROI, and if it wins, great. That means that buyer will come back and probably buy more tickets from me, but I'm not going to like stress that I sold a winner.
That's exactly right. There's an economic term for this, and I'm drawing a blank on that, but
loss aversion. It's called loss aversion.
And it's also and they did a study on this at Cameron Indoor. When you own something, you value it more than what it's worth. So I know we don't have a lot of time here to go through that, but the folks at Duke that camped out at Cameron Indoor for tickets, some people got the tickets and some people didn't. And they asked the students who got the tickets, how much would you sell your ticket for? And they said, oh, I would never, like $50,000. And they asked the students who didn't get the tickets, how much would you buy the tickets for? And they said, oh, I don't know, $250. And so that ownership, okay, you guys out there listening to this, you're in fantasy leagues. Like, the guy who has Nikola Jokic right now won't trade him for anything. Wembanyama, they won't trade him right now. But the truth is, there's a market value on everything. And the way I see it as an economist and someone who's studied the markets is, I want to sell when my ticket is worth the most, and I will sell it at market price or a little bit higher, even if that ticket is high. And so I have no problem selling a winner, and I have no problem, selling at the market price if it's high and someone just had a monster game, or a golfer just had a great round, or an NFL team, as we're in NFL season, like the Ravens just won 37-3. I'm like, yeah, I'll sell that at the odds of the market, no problem.
Yeah,
I believe it's called possession.
Yeah. It's called possession bias, and similar to the Duke story you just told. There's a great Business Insider video where someone does the same thing with lottery tickets, Powerball tickets, where someone paid $1 for it. They walk out the store, someone's like, "I'll give you $5 for that ticket." They're like, "No way! This ticket's going to be worth $300 million in about 24 hours. Just you wait." But moving back towards the sports betting, the other thing that I was always very impressed by, because you did become, one of our top sellers, and especially our number one golf seller in quick order. But another thing I was impressed by was how you would research these courses, and you would figure out like, and start times, and figure out like, who will do well on like who like in the first 9 holes of the tournament, and then be selling, after that as well. So I thought, that was taking, the selling to a whole other level. But the other thing I wanted to talk about, we moved towards different sports, was your 2021 NFL season with the Cincinnati Bengals. For those who don't remember, this was the season, I believe it was Joe Burrow's second year in the league. Bengals were an absolute crazy long shot, reached the Super Bowl, lost to the Rams. But all along the way, you were making Bengals bets at sports books and then flipping them on PropSwap. I pulled a couple stats here. This is specifically talking about Bengals Super Bowl futures. You had 33 sales, $250,000 in total collect amounts. You made a bunch of bets at 150 to 1 odds, where you bet $66 to win 10,000, and you sold, like I said, a lot of them ranging anywhere from $99 to $600. And then you also made a $500 free bet, because I believe this is like you had just moved to Colorado at this point. You made a $500 free bet at 50 to 1 odds and sold it for $1,400 after they beat the Raiders in the wild card round. What was, that was a crazy season for you. What was kind of the thinking behind all of that?
So, when you're betting long shots, you're always looking for upside volatility. And you're not going to get that with a quarterback who's just like run of the mill or who's been in the league 5-10 years and we all know what to expect. Joe Burrow played in his rookie season. He did all right. He got injured at the end and he came into this new season. And it's kind of like what I would say we're dealing with Trevor Lawrence right now, even CJ Stroud, is like, how good is this guy going to be? And the Bengals, I even had some tickets at 200 to 1, I remember, on them. But yeah, the bulk of my tickets were 150 to 1. And the Bengals were starting out of the gates not too bad. No one had seen this out of the Bengals for decades. I, as a Cleveland Browns fan, would know this. And so they looked pretty good and they were winning some games. And so I just kept firing $66 at a time to win 10 grand, right? Just kept firing, repeat bet, and just accumulating a monster $250,000 position in collect. And what am I going to do with this? I actually don't think the Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl. I don't even think they're going to get there. It turns out they did, and they almost did win, but I was just buying on value. This team should be 35 to 1. This team should be 50 to 1, not 150 to 1 with this upside quarterback who's won at every level. And so, yeah, as the season went on and as we got into the playoffs, I was just selling. I was selling, and heading into the Super Bowl, I was selling, just like you said before. You can sell winners, and if the Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl this year, like, God bless them. I'm going to take 150 to 1 odds, and I'm going to sell it eventually down to like 8 to 1 or 5 to 1, whatever they were in the playoffs. And I'm going to make, 15, 20 times my money. Whereas, you could look at the board right now on NFL futures, and you would have to get a team at 15 to 1 and have them go all the way with no injuries and no upsets and win the Super Bowl to cash that ticket. I didn't even have to cash it. I just had to sell it.
And so, you've given us some great pearls of wisdom already. And so as we wrap up this interview, if someone out there is listening that, they've sold a couple tickets, but maybe they want to get more involved, or they haven't sold any tickets, are there any other, pieces of advice you would give to someone out there who, wants to start, making bets and selling them on PropSwap?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go all Steve Jobs on you right now, but like when you grow up as wanting to be a sports bettor, you're told the industry is kind of the way it is, and you're just supposed to stay in your lane, bet the sports you know. If you want to be a sharp bettor, bet a bunch of unders and underdogs, have a little fun, make a little money, do the promotions, the boost, the deposit matches for sure. But that's a very limited outlook on sports betting in the industry. And this industry can be so much more. Once you discover one simple fact, and that's that, this industry was made up by the regulators and the lawmakers. They don't understand the industry, and they're no smarter than you are. And, this industry can be changed, and you can influence it, and you can build your own things, such as you guys at PropSwap, who have built PropSwap for other people to use. And that changed my life as a professional bettor. The ability to then spread my bets around on long shots everywhere, knowing that they didn't have to win. I could just sell them. And so I would advise bettors and aspiring bettors out there to take some long shots that you have a gut feeling on, that you're not sure if it's going to win. And, take some NFL futures, take some NBA futures on an Oklahoma City Thunder or a Sacramento Kings. They probably won't win the NBA championship, but man, they have a lot of upside. And if that upside hits and your gut instinct is right, you can cash in on that value by selling your ticket to somebody else who might also see value in that team and thinking they could win it all.
This is beautiful. For the audience, we did not pay Zach for this content, I assure you, but you've nailed the theory on selling on PropSwap, so we appreciate how well you've learned the system. So it seems like, last question here before we get into our next segment, it seems like you are more of a seller than a buyer on PropSwap. And if that's true, why aren't you using the bidding function more often? Because you can get some killer deals by bidding on PropSwap, aka someone selling for 1,000, you can bid 750 and see if that seller will accept or reject that low bid.
Absolutely. So, as a economist and market maker, selling is my priority. However, I have purchased many great tickets on PropSwap, and I consider PropSwap just another sports book. So when I'm comparing odds, I also want to look at PropSwap. Now, it does take a lot of time to compare odds at every book, and there are aggregators out there that will show you many books, and they do not show PropSwap yet. And so I believe that you have to have the time to be monitoring PropSwap or getting alerts when new tickets go up, and surfing it, and picking your sport, NFL futures, and looking at the market and just firing off bids. You guys know I will accept a bid as a seller, even if it's above market. I'll price my tickets high, and if someone comes in with a bid, I'm instantly accepting it. So I do think you should be adding PropSwap as another sports book to your arsenal.
Totally agree. And Luke and I talk about that all the time in terms of the bidding portion of it. So as a listener, you know that when we wrap up these interviews, we usually go into our weekly stake or swap segment. But because we've got you here and you're such a knowledgeable bettor, and we want to talk some more NBA, you mind sticking on with us?
Oh, it's my favorite part of the show. I would love to.
All right. Well, with that being said, it's time to get into a little stake or swap. First up, we'll be talking a little about this in-season tournament. For those who don't know, but maybe saw the courts, the crazy courts that they played on last week. The NBA is starting something new this year with the in-season tournament. Just kind of a brief breakdown. There are 3 groups in the East and 3 groups in the West. The winner of each group, which these group games will be played during November, will advance to an 8-team bracket. But then there will be 2 wildcard teams as well. But we won't be talking necessarily about the winner right now. I want to talk about the in-season tournament MVP and Luka Doncic to win the MVP. Currently 50-1 at FanDuel. I'm going to go first. I'm staking Luka to win the tournament MVP. Now, the Mavs did lose to the Nuggets last week in their first group play game, but I mentioned that wild card thing. The Mavs are playing great basketball right now. They're 5-1 on the season, and obviously the Nuggets are going to be the toughest team in that group, but given the fact they played the Pelicans, the Clippers, and then the worst team in the group, I think they've got a serious shot to make as a wild card, and Luka's one of the top favorites to win MVP for the league, and so. And then also, I just think Mark Cuban, just given his involvement, I feel like he wants the Mavs to win something, and I think he's a big supporter of this tournament. So for those reasons, I think the Mavs are a sneaky wild card team, and then if they do make it, obviously Luka is capable of just taking a game over and winning that MVP. So 50-1, he's currently like 22-1 at MGM. So I think there's value there. Luka 50-1 to win the MVP. Zach, let's go to you next. Are you staking or swapping Luka MVP?
I mean, can I stop the podcast and pull up my FanDuel app to bet on Luka at 50-1? Because that sounds like great odds. And the first thing I would say is, what are the Mavs odds to win the tournament? Because I think the MVP is going to be won by the team who wins. So Luka Doncic, look, this is not. I do an email newsletter every week, goes out to 1 million people. And I took Luka Doncic. I took the Dallas Mavericks to win this in-season tournament, and so that was 22-1. I love Luka Doncic at 50-1 because if the Mavericks win this tournament, he will win the MVP. There's no doubt about it, and he's going to put up as big a numbers as anybody in the league. And so maybe even if they don't win that tournament, he could still win the MVP.
I agree. I'll keep it brief. I also would stake that. Obviously, the only thing that we haven't mentioned is Kyrie Irving has some risk there if the Mavs do win and Kyrie goes off and Luka has a soft tournament. So that's the only risk there. But I agree, 50-1 on a guy that is up for MVP year after year. Value there for sure.
Yep. And just to answer your question, Zach, Mavs are currently 41-1 to win the in-season tournament. So I think if the Mavs are going to win it, it's going to be very difficult for someone other than Luka to win the MVP. And as we always talk about buy low, Mavs coming off that they lost. They're 0-1 in this tournament, so this is the time to maybe buy low on them. Next, we will transition to something with a little more history, which is the NBA championship. We know how this is going to go. Want to talk about the Memphis Grizzlies, who are currently down their superstar for the first 25 games of the season, currently 70-1 to win the NBA Finals at DraftKings. Luke, we will start with you first. Are you staking or swapping the Grizzlies?
Yeah, this was an interesting one. We talked about doing our homework between book to book, and to me, this is just value on DraftKings, which is rare. FanDuel, more often than not, has a better price than DraftKings. But in this situation, Memphis Grizzlies are 70-1 to win the NBA Finals on DraftKings, but only 35-1 at FanDuel. So I know I took it this morning. I posted someone on PropSwap already. John Morant is out for 25 total games, so you're going to have to weather the storm until he comes back. But Desmond Bane putting up 27 in a game, Jaren Jackson 22 a game, and then, of course, they added Marcus Smart in the offseason. So value there. Plus, I think if they can weather the storm, that's a championship contender.
Zach, we'll go with you. Are you staking or swapping the Grizzlies?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. So, the Grizzlies last year without Morant were actually phenomenal. I couldn't believe it. If we go back like 2 years ago, too. When Morant's been out, they've been terrific, which shocked me. However, they've started really slow this year. And I want to I'm going to swap them right now, but I'm going to keep my eye on them. Because if they get to 100-1, I do believe that there is value on Memphis. And here's why. They could get in as a 10 seed in the the play-in tournament. And with John Morant in a full strength with the young guys that Luke mentioned, I think they will be one of the top teams in the West. And so I'm going to swap them now and wait for a better number right there.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Zach on this one in the sense that I think we're 6 games. We're 6 games or so into the season, so we've got another 19 or so left to go without John Morant. And so if they do keep on sliding, I think you could see this thing hit triple digits. But I agree that they would be that's the worst team you'd want to play if if they get the 7 seed or whatever, and that's the worst team you would want to play in the first round if you're a 2 seed. So I'm gonna swap them for now, just because I know we've got still 19 more games left to go without John Morant. But once they but I would say not wait all full 19 games, maybe wait another 10 or so games, and then see if you can pick up a better number, because I don't think that maybe we will see some sort of crazy hot streak between now and when Ja comes back. All right, and then before we wrap it up, I want to talk a little Rookie of the Year. Obviously, one of the biggest stories so far in this young NBA season is Victor Wembanyama, but who's he's a minus money favorite to win Rookie of the Year. But flying a little under the radar is Chet Holmgren, who he did not play any games last year, so this is his rookie campaign. Currently 5.5-1 to win Rookie of the Year over at BetMGM. Mr. Price, we will start with you. Are you staking or swapping Chet?
I got to stop the podcast again if he's plus 550. Okay, so I'm staking Chet. I'm going all in on Chet Holmgren, and here's why. The guy can do it all. He can dribble, he can pass, he can shoot, and man, can he play defense and block shots. But here's the other thing. He just spent a year traveling with the Thunder, being with the guys, watching the teams from the bench, staying in the hotels, learning the cities. This guy's ready to play right now, and his team is probably the most exciting team in the NBA, if you ask me, and they have the most upside. And so if they make the playoffs and he's doing what he's already been doing, which is scoring close to 20 a game and 7-8 rebounds and 3 block shots and a steal. I think not only can he win Rookie of the Year, but he can win Defensive Player of the Year. Now, Wemby is a talent like we've never seen. And I think the Spurs and Coach Popovich are going to protect that. And I don't think Wemby's going to play the last month or two of the year. In fact, I think he could get injured at any moment. And so I'm going to stake Chet Holmgren now and kind of just wait and see what happens with Wemby. If he does get shut down, if he does get injured, they're going to be cautious with this guy for the future. He's 19 years old. I'm all in on Chet Holmgren, Rookie of the Year. I'm gonna stake Chet as well now. And this is, I would say this is more so based off of an injury risk with Wemby, or to your point that they may shut him down at a certain point versus the Thunder, which are could be one of the top teams in the West. The one thing that does scare me is the awards are voted on by humans, right? Versus the winner of a conference or the championship. And so actually I looked this up. The number of nationally televised games for the Spurs versus the Thunder. The Spurs actually have 19 nationally televised games versus the Thunder have 13. So we are going to get more Spurs games this year than we will the Thunder games. And people are, you can't not watch Wemby when you watch a Spurs game. And then versus the Thunder, which have a ton of great talent. Now I realize I'm kind of making a case more for Wemby, but again, the man, he scares me every time he runs up and down the floor, and I feel like if he takes one tumble, he could be shut down because the Spurs do not want to risk their franchise player just to win some award. That's not kind of the campaign they run. So Chet's great, 5.5 to 1 is great, and you just never know about injury. So for those reasons, I will stake Holmgren as well.
All right, last up. I am going to swap Chet Holmgren to win Rookie of the Year. 2 quick reasons. One, I actually think he can win Defensive Player of the Year. And so there's value there. He's like 30 to 1 to win Defensive Player of the Year. Chet Holmgren is. So a ton of value there. And then kind of alluding to what Ian was saying, we see this all the time with NFL MVP, that these voters are so biased. There's a ton of recency bias, meaning if you have a good second half of the season versus the first half of the season, you have a higher likelihood of winning because it's humans voting. They just remember what they just saw recently versus what they saw at the beginning of the season. And I honestly think this is a little bit of conspiracy theory that they want an international guy to win this award. And of course, Wembanyama's from France. So I just feel like these voters, these individual human voters, are too biased. So I would just swap Chet and I would be staking Wemby.
And let me just interject here for 1 second because Luke brought it up too. If you guys want to buy Chet Holmgren Defensive Player of the Year, I will sell above market because I was scooping that up at 80 to 1 before the season, 80 to 1, and I've got a lot of tickets. So go on PropSwap, look up Chet Holmgren Defensive Player of the Year. I guarantee you, the market maker, which is my username, has some for sale above market.
I'm going right now.
Yeah, there you go. And I remember you posted something on Twitter about that as well. So. Yeah, I mean, that does bring up a good point in terms of can you win 2 awards, but yeah, I know you've been big on Chet all season long, whether Defensive Player of the Year or Rookie of the Year. But the season's young, but it's already been exciting. I'm sure there'll be more action to come. Zach, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join us. We really enjoyed it, and I think the listeners will as well.
Appreciate being on, guys. And oh, by the way, I have sold 1 Defensive Player of the Year for Chet Holmgren on PropSwap already. So proof of concept right there. Thanks a lot, guys, for having me.
All right. Thanks, Zach. Take care.